Welcome to a new season in our lives. We are on a mission to demolish the arguments that have kept us from taking our next step towards true Christian authenticity. Are you ready to tear down those self-protective masks that are holding you back in life, in business, in relationships? It's about mindset, but more specifically, learning to keep our minds set on Christ regardless of circumstance. This is the Mindset School podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Easterling. Let's be real, okay? Are you ready? Let's go. If you've ever felt like your body is against you, I am so excited that you're here today because this episode can be game changer. Tonya, before we really dig into the meat of this conversation, I'm so curious. While you've been a fitness instructor, what has been the craziest thing that you've ever experienced in one of your classes?
I've been teaching spin now for 10 years, and we've at a couple different locations, and it's been really cool to see how community and just friendships have evolved from there. And there's all kinds of men, women, ages, backgrounds, and there's a handful that this last 6 months to a year have been coming, and they're men, retirees, and we play music, and they get to clapping. I don't know why. Once in a while, they're feeling the beat. Maybe it's the music that they like. It's just they're feeling good. And all of a sudden they just start clapping with the beat. And then another person starts clapping. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like what's going on right now? But it keeps the energy going and it makes everybody smile. And then a little bit later they stop. So thankfully they don't do it for 45 minutes. But there's just that little burst of energy. And it comes from the most unexpected people and times that you would think. You just roll with it.
That's so great. I can just visualize it. The people that you expect the least, you expect them to be walking quietly. That's great.
Exactly.
I wanted to start off light, asking some lighthearted questions.
Yeah.
Let's really dig into the meat of what we're here for today.
Sure.
So I want to start with your story.
Growing up, my mom was married 6 times to 5 people. So she actually married someone 2 times and it didn't work out either time. And so going through that, my sister and I had a lot of change. We had revolving doors. There was just a lot of maybe unknowns from that experience. And as I grew through that, I played it safe. I didn't really push the boundaries in terms of maybe what I could do physically, emotionally. I just played it safe and I just stayed in that neutral zone because that was comforting. And as a result, I was just, I don't know, boring. I guess I was an athlete. Like my mom did a great job at providing love and providing encouragement, but didn't really push us to do anything further. As I got older, wanting more and realizing that there were some disconnects. And down the road, looking back and seeing that my need that has evolved from that time was, am I wanted and am I loved? And that's the question that I was trying to get answered time and time again throughout that time. And so I would choose things that were safe in that space. And then for things that weren't, I would change my values. So I think just physically not feeling safe then led to decisions that for right or wrong, some were healthy, some weren't, and trying to navigate what that looks like as I was growing and maturing and trying to do life as a woman as well.
You mentioned way back when in your childhood, how long did you walk in that space of that question in your childhood before you realized, man, this is a disconnect? Did you have some mile markers where you started to have a little more self-awareness of that disconnect?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say in high school, in junior high, we started going to church. I found a Christian group that I really liked, that I did feel that connection where something wasn't expected of me, if you will, that I was more of that unconditional love, kind of feeling accepted, wanted, that type of thing. And then that experience led me to a high school that was a Christian high school. And in the 80s, and it was very, I would say, legalistic, and they had a set way that people do things, and I don't want to say controlling, but it was just, there was an expectation. And as I started to not feel safe or wanted in that space, as some situations happened, then again, I turned to unhealthy habits, and started to lean into that, wanting that connection or that physicalness or that security from boyfriends. So I've never was really drawn to alcohol or drugs, but I did look for that confirmation of being loved and wanted in physical relationships. And even though I loved God and I knew that what his word said about premarital sex and having those boundaries that you align with and not to compromise those in those times of not feeling wanted or loved, then I was willing to compromise. And so my senior year of high school, I was in a relationship and kind of went down that path. And honestly, I think in my head, I was thinking, okay, I'm not being hot or I'm not being cold. I'm just being that lukewarm. Like, I'm not going to choose a side. I'm just going to go down the middle. And I guess for some reason in my adolescent mind, that was like a safe space. And I think it was God's way of saying, no, I love you and I need your attention and I have more for you. And as a result, I got pregnant in April of my senior year. Now, this had happened to some upperclassmen before, and when that was shared, they had to leave. They couldn't graduate at that high school, and it was very much a shame and a just like a scarlet letter, if you will. And it wasn't an opportunity for them to come along and say, you're forgiven, like you're what you did, God doesn't love, but he still loves you. And that definitely wasn't the feeling. So I think just from those other experiences and obviously feeling devastated because I felt like not only did I let myself down, but here I am in a Christian high school and I sang in the worship team and I was an example for a lot of people. And so not only did I feel like I was letting myself down, but I was letting those that believed in me down and my grandparents. It just spiraled. But I kept it secret until I graduated because if I was transparent and vulnerable and honest with what was really happening, other than the other person involved in my family, they definitely wouldn't want me and do what you need to do to survive. And that was the biggest, most obvious wake up call. But as I grew older and became in relationships, then my default was to have that physical security, thinking that was love. And that was a wanting that I had been looking for. And so after all of the shame and guilt and disappointment and told people, of course, then about 3 months later, I had a miscarriage. And so there again, it was like I got grasped the new reality and what that would look like. And then to have all of that happen and then to have it not happen was like, why? Now I've been exposed. Like everybody knows that I'm flawed and made a mistake. And for what, I guess, was the question, just like for what? Me and this person ended up not staying together. I just moved forward. I buried it because, again, I felt like if it was anything that I shared that with, that I wouldn't be loved and wanted. And so I continued to play small and I continued not to really be my authentic self because I didn't think that they would really love me for me. And I got married. Of course, I told my husband. So there's like a small circle. And thankfully, he obviously felt like, okay, thanks for sharing. It happened, but we'll try to move forward. And really, and as I would even continue to be involved in churches and things, and it would maybe come up. And I remember having a conversation, and gosh, my son and daughter were born, they were in school. So I was like 25, 26, and we were at a cafe, and this gal that was like a mentor, Bible study group, and I just said, I can't, somehow it came up about the past or things that we've done. And I'm just like, I can't tell you because I'm just afraid that you won't like me anymore. And I never did tell her. And she probably thinks that, I don't know, maybe it's like going, run from the law or something, which it wasn't that, which in hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, but I had just put such a weight on that experience and such a shame and just, I don't know, an uneasiness. And I didn't feel that anyone would love me if they knew that it happened. So a couple years later, I did share it with a small group of friends, and they, of course, reacted appropriately, but they were like, okay, like it happened. You learned from it. They shared some things that they did that they felt were equally as challenging, and we just moved on. And it was the first time. And literally, so obviously when that happened, I was 18 when I had my unplanned pregnancy. And that conversation with those ladies happened when I was like 29. So unfortunately, it took 10 years for me to really move forward in a way that I felt like I could share with someone and not be concerned about one, their reaction, but two, that if they did react that way, that that would be okay. That I would still be loved by God. I would still have a family. Like I would still be worthy and capable and all of those things, regardless of others' acceptance or non-acceptance. So that was huge.
Yeah. So you mentioned just holding that weight of the shame within
Mhm.
you, just packaging it inside and carrying that for over 10
Right.
years.
Yeah.
We try to avoid shame by shoving those emotions inside because we don't want to share our stories because
Right.
we don't want to feel the shame. But
Right.
yet we don't realize that what we're doing is just carrying that shame
Hmm.
already. And
Exactly.
oh my goodness, that disconnect of really what was happening in that moment, that you really were carrying your shame by caring more about the other people's. You already made the decision. You're not mature enough to carry this. It sounds
True.
so in your face and frank when I
Hmm.
say it that way,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
in reality, that's really what we do when we
Hmm.
hold our stories into ourselves and project someone else's opinion before they even get to decide if they could walk through
Right.
that with us. While your story may not be everyone's to walk with you, we don't want to go project our stories onto
Hmm.
everyone in every environment. I'm so proud of you for
Hmm.
sharing with those ladies in that moment that you finally did. What happened with your body when you did that? Was there something that felt different? Was there a freedom there? I'm really curious how that felt to just let that out and to kind of deflate that shame
Right.
that had
Exactly.
been so heavy inside.
Yeah. It just, like you said, it deflated, like you, in a good way. Just all of the tension and maybe apprehension and insecurity and doubt dissolved into feeling so much lighter and so much freer and so much more seen that I could and get that glimpse that you could be you, me, you're sharing your stories and still be accepted and loved. And it was a glimmer of, I would say, hope that there are people that I could be transparent with and continue to have a good relationship, but definitely just so much lighter and so much at peace and thankfulness. Oh my gosh. Like thankfulness that I had, like you said, the courage to share in that moment when we did, because it just seemed to be the right time and the right space. But then, yeah, just feeling thankful that I felt that leading and that I didn't ignore it,
Yeah.
which sometimes can be challenging too, because it's like, really? Should I? And you have that internal conversation that goes around and around. And then sometimes you do follow through, with what God's leading, which is what you hope to do. But then sometimes you don't. And then you wish that you would have. So I
Yeah.
definitely think that was an important night, in order for me to move forward in that area.
Yeah, I volunteer in a 12-step program. And
Mm-hmm.
in that space, like the freedom that women get just by saying things out loud that they've never said
Right,
before is
right.
amazing. It is so
Yeah.
amazing when we let the air out of that balloon that we have
Mm-hmm.
carried because that balloon is not filled, although it is only hot air, because a lot of the
Right.
times it's not real. It is
Exactly.
so heavy when it's inside
Mm-hmm.
of our bodies. I can't describe like the physical feeling of that freedom. It is
Mm-hmm.
something that
Exactly.
a weight that when it's lifted, you only can know it by experience. And
Right.
if you're listening right now and that weight is inside of you and you need to find someone
Mm.
and you need to say something out loud that you've never said before, I hope that you have just the strength from God that He brought you here to listen to this message so that you would find someone to
Yes.
confide in, to say something out loud that you've never said out loud before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scripture that I'm reminded of when I'm saying this. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony.
Mm.
And our testimony is our story. You can overcome by just sharing it. Tonya,
Right.
what happened next? What happened next in your life?
Oh my gosh. I think just having that opportunity of sharing and feeling that weight lifted just like to consider new opportunities, to kind of think of myself in a new way and look at life, more with more possibilities. So we moved to a new city shortly after that. And again, due to just being married young and having to make some priorities, I really never felt passionate enough about anything to continue in a 4-year degree situation. And so I had always been interested in healthcare, like a rad tech position, something where you're involved in the process, helping patients, being part of the solution. So I went back to school, and I wasn't an amazing student in high school. I guess because I was too busy trying to feel wanted. I don't know. But so we investigated at our community college, and I enrolled in a rad tech program. And I didn't even do well enough on my like SAT kind of thing. Like I had to again go back and study and take those tests, which again, if I didn't feel confident in some of those other areas of my life, I definitely don't think that I would have felt like I could tackle this next adventure, but went back and took some of those tests, like being 30 something and you're with the high school kids, taking the SATs and those types of things in order to get the score that you need to get into the school. So there was a lot of hoops that happened, but it was just a new passion that I had always considered up to that point, but just never felt either confident enough or just strong enough to do what it took to make those extra steps happen.
Yeah. So
So,
can we pause like right there
yes.
really fast? Because I don't want the listeners to miss this. You felt some freedom in your
Hmm.
life. And with that freedom, you were able in that moment to, I feel like I can conquer some things and do some new things with my life.
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
100%.
Popping that balloon that felt
Yeah.
like a lead balloon inside gave
Hmm.
you the strength and courage that you needed to take action in a totally different area, in a totally different
Exactly.
arena.
Yeah.
That right there, that is the power of mindset and body. Physically, the things that we feel like we can take action to, sometimes that lead balloon inside is
Right.
all we need to pop. And
Right.
and okay, I didn't want them to miss what you just said.
You're absolutely right. It was the first time in my life maybe I didn't play safe, or you do have that courage to be like, all right, I have some more in me than I had thought and originally. So then went on to become a rad tech. And we moved here to the Charlotte area, and I pursued mammography, which I loved because I have a heart for women and for women's health. And just being a part really for the last 15 years to be in the journey of those women, whether it be in mammogram for screening purposes or there is a cancer diagnosis and biopsies and those types of things that evolve in that person's life as well. And being able to be the calm in their storm and to be a source of encouragement and sometimes prayer. You spend a lot of time with those patients in those situations and you get to know each other maybe a little more one-on-one. So based on what they were leaning towards or looking for, we could provide some of that comfort. And then in that course of that, with my kids being grown and starting to find their own interests, then that's when I really started to recircle back into some of more of the physical fun things like going to the gym and being curious. I had a counselor once that just, I remember had a lot of ideas and she's just be curious. Just go try something that might look fun. And if it's fun, great. And if it's not, then you know. So I'm like, I like that idea because I think sometimes we just get caught up in, I don't know if I'm going to like it or I don't know if it's going to work out, but just taking it a different perspective and think, just be curious, like no commitment, like just give it a try. So I
Yes.
started taking spin classes because again, more than just lack of time, like of course there's some poundage that I could get rid of and there was a fitness level that I could attain, but really originally that wasn't the goal. But like with my story in terms of sharing deeper parts of myself, with the physical aspect, seeing those little baby steps like, oh, I went to a class and it was fun. And then you want to go to another one and then you meet friends. And then you start to look at the instructor and think, huh, maybe I could teach that class. And so it's just an evolution of the more that you feel excited and empowered and strong physically in this situation, the more that you have that confidence maybe to continue to step out of your comfort zone and try new things that you wouldn't have tried before, even thought about trying when you originally just went into that one class or started taking the steps towards doing something more on the active side of life.
Yes, Tanya, I love what you're saying. It is so, so powerful. Whenever I'm coaching clients,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I recommend is whenever we're taking our thoughts captive, sometimes they're having thoughts that aren't serving them at all.
Right,
And it's
right.
something they're linking to their identity and they
Mm-hmm.
truly believe it about themselves. And I ask them to take that thought captive, and then I ask them sometimes to try on a new thought. And I
Mm-hmm.
refer to their new thought like a sweater. I'm like, will you just try on this thought like a sweater? And let's see how
Yeah,
it works. And it
right.
sounds like you were trying on a new hobby, which was a
Exactly.
whole new thought process for yourself
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
How did launching yourself into that hobby and really
Hmm.
leaning into that, how did it connect your mind with your body in unique ways?
Even now, like having a heavy day or anxiety or going around in your thoughts, going for a walk or getting outside of your four walls and just getting out of that space definitely is something that I rely on even now. In fact, if I don't do it, I do feel heavier in terms of just my mind and I start to feel a little more anxious, maybe a little down. So I definitely think that as you create those habits physically, it can totally reshape the way that you think and process and pursue opportunities with your life. And so with spin and becoming an instructor, then that kind of led to new goals, which again, something that I would never have considered because I'm not a runner. And I was thinking, like in the previous example, like you share your story and people still love you. And then you want to, kind of you stand a little taller and you feel like you want to put yourself out there a little bit more. So it's very similar with the body connection, where even if you're just never even done anything at all, like just start where you can, start where you are and take that first step. So maybe you're just going to walk and then you might want to walk a 5K. And then maybe you think about running. And so there's those little steps that kind of, you don't even realize it sometimes, I don't think, but you're just like, what if? It's like, I've accomplished some of this stuff, or this stuff was fun, or I met some new friends. What if I took it to the next step? So a few years after instructing, we met some friends and she was a runner. And so we were like, yeah, we were sitting around the table again. On all these things happen around tables, I guess. And I was like, I need a new challenge. And they were like, how about you join us for a half marathon at Disney? And I'm like, I like Disney. Like that could be fun. It's a different challenge. It's something I haven't done before. I'm not a runner, but they're like, there's a program. We'll help you get there. That was the next kind of big challenge. And I trained, like I did everything by the book. I was feeling excited, gonna get this done. And then literally like a month before I was running and I felt something not good. And so I went to the doctor and I ended up having a fracture on my lower leg on one side and a broken toe on the other side. So I was like, oh my gosh, because you're excited, you want to move forward, you want to try break a new, I don't know, belief barrier. And I mean, half marathon, you're just like, oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. And of course, you told people, and here I was like on injured reserves, basically. So I'm like, what the heck? So my husband and I, we were training with this couple. We decided to go down anyway. At the ortho place, I got a boot. And so I was still wrestling because I was trying to figure out, can we get our money back? Can you prolong it? And Disney was, willing to work with us. But the night before the event, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to try. I don't know how it's going to go. I could wear a shoe on one foot. I had a boot on the other foot, but I thought I'm going to give it a try. If I can go a mile or two, then I can say I tried. If I don't know, for whatever it was, I just felt like this was my opportunity. I don't know if any of your listeners have done a half marathon or anything at Disney, but there are these people called balloon ladies, and they're at an event with a big old thing of balloons, and they're like the timekeepers. So your goal is to stay ahead of the balloon ladies because if you get behind them too far, you're not able to continue in the race because of logistics that they have to figure out on the front end. So I just started just one step at a time. I had a little bag over my back with a shoe because I thought I might need my other shoe, with one shoe on my foot, a boot on the other, water bottle, and just one step at a time. So there we are. And 1 mile led to two, led to three. And I just literally, I don't even know. I must have just been in the zone because I did have music in my ears, but I just thought the next mile, the next step. And I finished. I finished. And I'm just like that, doing something like that where you have a challenge and then you get to the challenge and then you overcome the challenge after there's some unexpected things, then holy smokes, that like just, I don't know. After that, I was like, I can do anything. Not on my own power. It was definitely God. And there was a lot of prayers. And I was just like, please just help me do what's right because I didn't want to injure myself further. But at the same time, I felt like I deserve it to him and to myself to just see where it goes. So that was probably not super smart, but amazing the way that, again, our mind and body and just not looking at the end result and not getting overwhelmed and not thinking about all the what ifs, but just look at that next step. Be like, I'm just going to take that next step and see where it goes. And then the next step could lead to the next. And it's just amazing where God will take you and where opportunities will show itself if you're just willing to keep moving forward, however that looks like.
That story is amazing. It's funny you mentioned balloons again because here we are. Like, what would happen if the
Right?
lead balloon would have
This
been
is so
holding you
true.
back from that
You're
moment?
right. Yeah.
And it wasn't anymore. You had found your freedom. You had found momentum. And
Hmm.
sometimes the only thing holding us back is we're sitting in our cars and we have
Right.
them in park and we're
Right.
trying to steer instead
Right.
of putting our car in drive
Right.
and letting it
Exactly.
steer and have a little momentum.
Yes.
And you popped your lead balloon and found some freedom and some space
Exactly.
there. And
Yeah.
now look at you. You've got even more momentum now.
Hmm.
So Tonya, I really want the listeners to understand what it is you're doing today.
Doing what is fun and exciting, and I'm not hardcore. So, leading the people in the way that they're able, whether it be through spin or group fitness or taking walks. And I wanted to help people realize their potential in that way and get them to those growth opportunities and to overcome some of the obstacles or the mindsets that maybe they had been challenged with. Because in healthcare, you see a lot of different types of people, and some have the interest, but they don't have the know how, and they don't even know where to start. They might not have the encouragement. They might not have some sort of social network or financial means to know what that first step looks like. So I got to thinking while I was in healthcare, you can give someone all the reasons why they should go and take a walk or do things that can be good for their body, whether it be eating well, activity, that type of thing. But if they don't know mentally, maybe the roadblocks that they're dealing with, for example, for mine, like the am I wanted, and doing things in a harmful way without even realizing, without even knowing, like connecting the dots, that might be something that was continuing to set me back if I hadn't realized that. So I wanted to put together the opportunity for growth physically, but then to also meet the needs of those people that are interested in doing that to discover if they haven't been successful or if they're feeling that's not something that they can achieve, why is that? And that led back to meeting Mike and the coaching group that we have with the 7 primal questions and finding out with those people, like, what is the limiting belief? What is the concern? Is it that they don't feel safe in those environments? Is it that they don't feel that they would be wanted in that type of setting, that they're not good enough? And so really we talk a lot about the roots instead of the branches, getting to the reason and how they're wired and what their thought processes are, and then figuring out how to empower them and to encourage them to maybe think a different way if that's what's needed to be able to achieve some of those things that they don't feel is possible, whether it be in the physical getting your bodies going or whether it be a goal that maybe they think is unattainable or something in their career or in their relationships that they don't feel is meant for them. Really investigating why they think that and hopefully finding the common ground to show how they are able to, how we are able to do things. And again, not on our own strength, but through him and through his guiding and just leaning into that and being still. I have a little tattoo even on my side, and it's the Psalms verse, be still and know that I am God. Just being still and recognizing how our life all has fit together and grows together, ultimately making our kind of our message to encourage and help other people. So I guess that's a combination that led me through the last few years to bring it all together and try to figure out the whole picture of how someone can really just move forward the best way that they can and be fulfilled and live fully and be excited about the next opportunity.
So good. If you're listening and you're not familiar with Mike Foster's book, The Primal Question, it is such a wonderful resource in order to understand what is your apex emotional need? What is the root, rather than focusing on these leaves on the tree, which are problems
Right.
are experiencing? And Tonya, I refer to this as also going back instead of erasing the printed copy that comes out of the printer and trying to get
Right.
an eraser and erase it. We
Right.
keep doing that over and over and over, or
Yeah.
getting whiteout and changing it. Going back to your computer and changing the programming in order to
Mm,
print the right copy to come out of the printer correct in the first place.
mm,
And
right.
that's what coaching can do for people.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's really powerful in ways that we're not coaches who are just going to talk about the problems all the time. We're going to
Hmm.
find the source of the problems instead of
Exactly.
just trying to medicate and talk about the problem. We want to know where it's
Exactly.
coming from. I love your heart and I love your story and your perseverance.
Thank
Girl, let's go, right? Let's
you.
just go.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
Tonya, how are you using the tools that you have learned through the primal question, or how do you intend to use them in the future to make the impact that you want on someone's life?
Being a coach, I've recently segued out of full-time healthcare into this opportunity to help others and encourage others and hopefully empower them. So what we've been doing is some individual coaching. Again, just meeting them where they're at. Everyone has a different story and has things that may be challenging for them and are wanting to really hit that specifically. Using the quiz with the 7 primal questions, finding out their highest emotional need, how they operate best, and then using that information to see what their strengths are in life and maybe areas that we could identify as for limiting beliefs or things that might make them turn to unhealthy habits in order to get those questions answered the way that they want to. So I would say individually is very powerful. I have been talking with some people as well to take that framework into women's ministries, maybe leadership opportunities to maximize the opportunity that they have to build and grow leaders, but to give them the lens again to see how we operate like myself and think instead of something was wrong with me or I was broken or damaged or bad, becoming more aware can add a lot of value to an individual. So a little combination of individual coaching, group coaching, workshops, and continuing to grow and learn.
I love it. Tonya, if there's a woman out here listening and she could only walk away with one takeaway from our conversation today, what would you want her to know?
That's a great question. That you're worthy and capable and resilient more than you maybe even realize. And that just taking the steps to look back, not in a way that can make you down or to find fault, but just in a way to heal and to grow and to learn, to just have an even more amazing future and have the confidence to go for some of those things that you might feel nervous or scared or afraid that are out of your comfort zone, but just know that you have what it takes. You just have one step at a time. That's all it takes. And just believing in yourself and finding that safe person to take that first step forward is very powerful.
Tonya, thank you so much for teaching us to connect our mind and our bodies today. And thank you for sharing your story because it matters so much. I know learning to have two ears and to lean into the testimony of others is so powerful. And the way that we become empowered by listening and learning from other people's stories. So, thank you for vulnerably sharing yours today because
Well,
I know someone's going to listen and it's going to make an impact. Thank you for joining me today on our journey towards Christian authenticity and a Christ-centered mindset. Remember, the masks that we wear not only hide our true selves, but also keep us held back, living small in life, in business, and in relationships. As we wrap up, I invite you to take a crucial step towards your breakthrough. I created the Breakthrough Quiz just for you. Head over to themindsetschool.net/quiz and dive in to discover a guide to move you closer to your authentic self and renewing your mind God's way. Until next time, let's be real, okay?